Hey, it's Erik. It's another great day of recovery. I'm doing a number of videos today, so it's the same day of recovery. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about chronic relapse or chronic slippers or people that slip a lot in their program. And it's a question that comes up a lot, and I have a lot of compassion for people that are in this position. I think we have to be so careful that those that may have sobriety don't get, I don't know, arrogant or insensitive to people that, for whatever reason, maybe a mysterious reason, they're slipping. And I work professionally as a counselor, so or a coach internationally around the world through the power of the internet and Zoom to help people that are stuck in their program. And so some of this, and I hesitate to say wisdom, or I'll just say experience, but wisdom I don't think comes from a book. Although I love to read those books where they have such good quotes. But I can read it, but it's not going to be the same as when you experience it. For instance, a Bible verse that talks about a wise man who uh, builds his house on a rock, and there's a foolish man who builds his house on sand. Well, both of them are going to experience some kind of torrential rain, or I always picture this near the edge of an ocean where, yeah, where do you find sand or a rock? Well, at the beach. And you may be hearing dinging, and that's my daughter giving me beautiful pictures of my little granddaughter. Anyway, I'm not seeing them now, so I'll just endure that and wait to see them. But back to the story of the rock, the man who builds his house on a rock, the man who builds his house on sand. When the rains come, when the storm hits, the person on the rock will survive. And the person not on rock but shifting sand won't. And Jesus, who's telling this parable, says, "He who practices my words is like the man who builds his house on a rock. And he who does not practice these words, but maybe just thinks, oh, I know them because I read them and I'll try to live by them, but I'm actually not living by them. It is the person who, when things come and rains and wind, it all falls apart." So, anyway, that's kind of a foundation for this. So, if you have found yourself in a state of a slip, and I thought about this, why do we even use the word slip? It's because I think originally people thought in terms of taking steps, and that a walking metaphor makes sense to say I slipped. Okay, I think that's interesting. So, walking versus slipping, and so a person who slips. Well, here are some things that I just really believe so wholeheartedly that I'm almost dogmatic and maybe too bold at some of these things. So please forgive me ahead of time. One is, don't beat yourself up. Beating yourself up is a total waste of time. Yep, I've never, and I beat myself up over lots of things. Yeah, but less so. It's a total waste of time because what it is, it's a lesson in pride, is what it is. If one beats themselves up over and over and over, then we can be assured that they were trusting themselves to be sober from whatever your addiction is, from overeating, spending, gambling, sexing, drugs, and alcohol. It's as if I have the power over it. And how could I let myself slip? Like, what's that? And see, that's the reality, is it would not be an addiction if we were not powerless over it. So we can hold ourselves responsible maybe for some other things like not working the program, but this is a very, very, very powerful disease. In fact, I think more people slip from pride than anything else. And so pride says, hey, I got this. I have 40 days of sobriety. I'm good to go. And I don't need to do the daily meditation and prayer. That's like unplugging from electrical outlet and going on self power battery. And then we wonder why we crash and burned and why the lights went out. It's because we stopped working the program. Yeah. If we're just working the program in between slips, that's not useful. We work the program regardless. Okay. The other thing that I think is if we are going to do the same thing over and expect different results, and this is more common than one would think. They go to the same meetings, same sponsor, do the same thing over and over. In fact, I hear sponsors say, well, you should go back and do step one again. They already did step one. What are they thinking? Read the same pages. It's okay. You could do that 2 or 3 times. Maybe the second time you do it, but to do it 3 and 4, and I boldly tell people I would do the steps like they did in the early days of AA, which is get through steps 1 through 3 in one day, 4 through 8 in the next day. I'm not saying they all did this way, but this is kind of how I've been doing it, you know, um, quicker, and it works rather than dragging things out. So if you're going to hold on to the same things you've been doing, and somehow think it's going to turn out different, that would be misguided. Yeah. There is this thought, well, if I just do it harder, maybe it'll work. I'm not so sure. And we'll come to the solutions here where that kind of is the antithesis of that. What the hint there is, I need to look at what am I doing and what pieces are missing. If I'm baking a cake and it turns out horrible, I want to ask myself, what did I leave out? And that maybe this recipe, I just can't pick and choose what goes in it. Some things you can, but some things are essential. So what are the essential ingredients? Um, Another not to do item is try to analyze and think your way out. Let's think about this. And when I was sitting in meetings for years and seeing the little, they have these signs like like live and first things first. And a lot of these slogans are good, but there's one called think, think, think. I still don't understand what that's about. My best thinking screwed this all up. I can't think my way out of a problem I behaved myself into or emotionally got into. So the best we can do is to step our way out through the steps. I think also analysis and thinking your way out is pride. It's just more pride and it's self-will, self-direction, and it's not going to turn out well. Let's add something. Add a therapist to help you analyze and think your way out. I don't think that's a good idea, and I think it's kind of expensive. I think therapy is good for a number of things, but I'm not sure it's really good unless the therapist understands addiction process. And because if we just analyze what's underneath your acting out, if you're a sexaholic or a gambler, or a spender, or a food addict, or just analyze what is the root cause of my depression and not depression, but alcohol and drugs. And then and I hear that all the time and I just smile because I know that if they continue to work with me, eventually they're going to say, I use these things because I'm an alcoholic. There is no deeper meaning than that. And I have good therapist friends that believe that understand that trauma, that'll help. Okay, just show me the results. Just show me the results of person after person after they got healed from their trauma and now they're sober. I'd find that a lot of times you can't really do the trauma work because they're busy drinking or smoking marijuana or acting out sexually or compulsive overeating or spending. That the model I've bought into is that it says when we straighten out spiritually, the physical and the mental follow. So that's just my experience, and maybe there's something out there that's different, and I'm open to that because I want to keep an open mind. It says in the AA book, we realize we know only little. Things to do, okay. Return to the program quickly. Don't try to do it slowly. Just as soon as you can get back to the program. I was working with two people. One person called me within a week, and I was the one who asked them, "Hey, all this stuff," and then I asked them, "Where are you sobriety wise?" And they go, "Oh, I slipped a week ago." It's like, okay. Another person, it was quick. It was like within hours. So, and this is common in my work as a therapist that um, if you can, and some people don't even return at all because they feel ashamed. So don't let shame keep you from just quickly getting back into the program. Some of this also has to do with my work as a neurofeedback practitioner. Neurofeedback, when wires are applied to the brain, to the scalp rather. Um, that's funny. Um, it it has a great effect. What it does is take away some of the fear and the shame because the brain is calm. It can look at things faster. So if people relapse, one of the things we see is they relapse really quick, and then they go back, and then they're in the program, and they're just more likely to stay sober. A lot of research shows it's like 70 to 80% success rate that when combined with 12 steps. So on that principle, if people could actually just not experience the shame thing and continue on, they do really well. Okay. Call someone in the program. Now, notice the word I didn't say sponsor. I believe that sponsors really sponsored people for about a month and then they became friends. But just call someone. Yeah. Just call someone, text someone. It seems to stop the cycle. And some people just go, I'll call you every day. And not that I can keep someone sober, but they just feel like it's better than not. Okay. I think addiction disconnects us. It really does. It makes us very, very isolated, very, very lonely, very, very self pitying. That's why we use the drug. We often don't feel connected to people or to God, and we feel sad or scared or lonely or bored or something. So we go do the behavior or the drug, and then it just further disconnects us. In fact, you could say that the word sobriety could be a synonym for connection. So that if someone says, I lost my sobriety, they could say, well, it's like I lost my connection with God, connection with myself. I don't even know what I'm feeling, or connection with you. That's why people could have slipped a week ago and they feel still so disconnected versus when they're 3 months, they're just so much more connected. Focus on the steps, not on analyzing why you fell. Okay. So it's as simple as go back to the program, work on the steps. And this works, I think. People want to talk about this, and this, and this. And it's like, yeah, just let's work the steps. It's like medicine. The medicine is said to be taken morning and night with prayer, with self analyzing, uh, analyzing in the sense that what are my defects of character? Where was I selfish, dishonest, fearful, or resentful today? But to start to analyze, well, maybe I shouldn't have gone down that street, and maybe I should have had blocking software, and maybe I was depressed, and that's why I started drinking, and that's why my boss, I was going under a long, difficult time at work, so I needed that Xanax to feel better. Or, the pandemic's been hard on everybody. That's why everybody's overeating. It goes on and on and on and on, and I can attest. that analyzing why we do what we do doesn't stop it. But humbly working the steps, keyword is humble, meaning I'm not going to think my way out of this. All of a sudden, I get the gift of sobriety one day at a time, and the compulsion leaves. That's why I get so animated about this. I was going to say hot and bothered, but I get hot and bothered by the lack of not understanding, but because there's a lot of confusion in program, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody in any 12-step group, but being a therapist on the well, being in programs and one program really, I think of it as one program steps, but also being a therapist, I'm on the sidelines and I see the devastation of all this. And I used to be more quieter. Like, I don't want to make waves. Why make waves? But now I'm more likely to say, look, that isn't the program that I'm experiencing. And I thought I would get a lot of angry people, you know, how addicts can be. Oh, people say, well, tell me more. Like, I was in a meeting one time and this gentleman, really great guy, he says, you know, we're all just one step away from the curb. I heard that before. Like, we're all one foot a step away from the curb of acting out or drinking or drugging or spending or gambling or whatever. And the meeting hadn't started. And I said, you know, that's not my experience. And it's like, wow, that would have felt like pride to me, but it's like, that's not my experience anymore. If we're all just living near the edge of a cliff, I would say that's not working the program for me. Working the program is being over here safe and protected, it says on the bottom of page 84. We have not sworn off. The problem has been removed. We are neither fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. The problem has been removed. Like, are you kidding me? That sounds like too good to be true. This is rough, and I have friends that run treatment centers, but no treatment center ever talks about that. They don't put any kind of guarantees on that. It's because a lot of them aren't really experiencing the steps. Yeah, if people experience the steps, that's what they'll have. This is the bottom of page 84. I'll put a link in the description there. Um, and that's kind of comes back to, am I actually practicing the steps? If I do the steps, it'll work. It works really well. So focus on the steps, not analyzing. Um, Look with the help of a sponsor coach what is missing in my program. So this is actually important. Just like if I keep on relapsing, I have to ask, okay, there's a missing ingredient here, and I'm blind to it. Now I could pray, God, please help me, say like I am at doing steps 10 and 11 and asking myself, what could I do better? Am I holding grudges? Am I forgiving? What are my defects of character if I'm praying them away? If you're not doing all that, you just don't have a program of recovery. And people go, are you kidding me? There are stories where people are in meetings for years and maybe even sober for 17 years, but they're not really free from that temptation. And then when they experience the steps as outlined in the AA, it goes away. And they go, are you kidding me? So I white knuckled this for 17 years. Yeah, yeah, that can happen. Um, so there are certain ingredients, and that's what I try to hope to bring out in these videos here. And this may be the last one. Um, Ask yourself whether you really want sobriety. Now, this is a dangerous one because I have people that go, I don't know if I want sobriety. I just want this. Yeah, I think that the addiction itself is so powerful, so powerful. Like, this is a snack bar. I'll use this as an example. They are good, but if I'm just like devouring this, I can't say no to this. There must be something really wrong. Maybe I don't want sobriety. Yeah, I would say kind of hogwash to that. Okay. I would help that person by saying, look, don't focus on this. focus on the steps. Just take the medicine day by day by day. And as a sponsor or coach or helper, just continue to encourage the person to be patient with themselves, patient with God, their understanding of God, because I really believe that people can get sober. I really do, and tenacity is really really important because the addiction almost comes with it, embedded with it, a sense of despair that I'll never ever get better, and I just don't believe that. I just don't. I have seen myself recover. I've seen all kinds of people recover, and if someone doesn't recover, let's assume that it's well, first of all, they wouldn't be in a meeting or they wouldn't be calling me up. But let's assume there's just something missing and that what they're experiencing is this power. This is actually only a token of the power, but let's say the power of a food addiction is more powerful than my willpower to fight it. And so I perceive that as, see, I guess I don't want that. See, the way I see it is that um, God, in fact, I'll use this. This is a mug, but I am forgotten. And we're making God a mug here, but God is bigger than this. I just have to keep in touch with God day to day. And if I do that, eventually the addiction will go away. It's as simple as that. What am I not a fan of? This is where I'm just gonna, and I thought these through, prayed these through quickly, but I pretty much feel okay saying these things. And this is just my own little opinion. And some of these you'll find that I'm really not that dogmatic on them, but I'm just not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of 90 days and 90 meetings. I used to say it's not a bad idea, especially if you're very new to the program. Think about it this way, you could go to one meeting a week for every day, say like not every day, every week. That's 52 meetings in 1 year. You go to 90 days and 90 meetings, you've gotten a year and a half of meetings in 90 days. That's not terrible. But here's the thing, if the expectation is that you're going to get sober by doing that, and there's some problems with it, the 90 days, 90 meetings kind of can promote perfectionism, which is part of the disease, a defect of character. Two, it could inflate pride. Um, and it's a lot of extra busy work where I would take, and this is where I'd be very bold, take, if a sponsor spends and they know how to get people through the steps, it takes maybe 2 hours for their first meeting to get through steps 1 through 3 in the AA Big Book. The next day or the next few days, they're going to do 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and give that 5 hours. Once they connect with those passages in the AA book, they're going to go, well, now I understand how this works. It's not my power, it's God's power. I have to get rid of the defects of character. I can't get rid of them myself. How am I going to do that? By asking God daily to remove these defects. And then I do steps 10 and 11. Now, what I described, you may never hear in meetings. You may hear a lot of people trying to unload how bad their last week was in hopes that that would be a new comfort system so they don't need to use this. You see. Um, so, so yeah. But is it terrible? No, it's not the end of the world. But I just would rather people spend their time on the steps. And meetings are supportive, good literature is supportive, but it's not the same as working the steps. Think about it this way, if my goal is to bake a cake, boy, I feel like my pastor with these. This is a cake, and I want it to turn out the way it should taste and everything. Just follow the recipe. Um, can I bake it myself? Could I read the AA book and somehow get the cookbook, um, steps out? I could, but the book itself tells me I need to be with other people, that this is not something I can bake alone. It doesn't work that way. I have to be with someone who's going to help me with the steps. I have to, it presupposes a fellowship. It does. So, yeah, I will refrain from saying that. Um, so it presupposes, but that I am doing this in context with people. And the meeting, why would meetings help me? Because I'm seeing how people bake their cake. I go, whoa, so these people are sober, these people aren't. I want what these people have so then I can call them or connect with them and to have them teach me how to bake a cake. And how much better is it going to go if they actually come to my house or I go to their house or in this day and world, do a Zoom meeting and just bake the cake together. I had an opportunity to help some people, dear people, and it was nice. I got this feedback that was really interesting. This gentleman says, I've never really seen how to do four step. And it was helpful actually just practicing with someone how to do the four step in front of the group. Yeah, I think that is helpful. I think that's really helpful. And in working with people, I want to share what I do to bake a cake today. Now, I may do these things. It's a poor metaphor, but it kind of works. I may do pouring of flour and sugar and milk and eggs and butter and flavoring and whatever. But somehow the process of it all going into the oven and it comes out a cake, that was beyond my control. I just followed certain directions. And that's where the AA book is pretty clear on this. It says that all was required to have this entire psychic change was to follow a few steps. And they are. They're just a few steps. It's not complicated. In fact, if I bring in all this other stuff, and that would be the danger of a lot of meetings too, is that we end up um, getting all these ingredients in a cake that don't really even belong in a cake. And it turns out like focaccia or something like that. So, um, another thing I'm not a fan of is talking incessantly to a sponsor about things that don't relate to the steps. We think somehow that if I just dump in meetings or dump on a sponsor and talk about, well, then my wife did this, and then the car accident did that, and I hope this home loan goes through, or I think I may have diabetes, or I have this or that, and on and on and on. Now, a good sponsor is very loving, kind, patient, and takes all that, maybe lets me talk for 3 or 4 minutes, really. But to let me dump and then I feel better. Yeah, no, it's like weave it into the steps. And they may say, Eric, did you do your morning prayers or evening prayers? And if I'm new, I go, well, what is that? Like, that's the program. That is the actual program, not calling me. Now, I never want to give the impression to not call, but I would rather teach them how to fish rather than me handing them a fish. But at the beginning, it's like, well, let's do this together. So you're mad at your mother. What did your mother do? Well, she's abusive to me. She's this and she's a witch. Okay. So then we're going to set that aside and go to what is your part in it? I don't have a part in it. Well, you actually always have a part in it. And then through a little talking, I may go, wow, I'm really not good with boundaries, or I don't have good, um, I'm not honest. Now, the boundary thing is tricky because it feels like therapy talk, but really, it may be God's answer to why I keep getting re abused. And what I'm needing to pray for is speaking the truth in love or boundaries or something like that. So it's a daily program where God will gift you what you need to stay sober. So, yeah, focus on the steps, not on the story. Okay. Reading outside literature. I'm not a fan of this. And I just take deep breaths and smile, and it may look like I'm a crazy person about the AA book. The AA books, well, and part of it is my own history. I read for all this stuff, didn't work. And then once you take the steps, you realize, why does it not work? It's based on human wisdom, human knowledge, and it really appeals to ego. Um, I'm being distracted because the way the light's shining, it looks like I'm having a beam come down on my head. Yeah. Hopefully you guys will get a kick out of that. Yeah, no, that's just lighting from outside. It's not any heavenly light. Um, but yeah, no, it's actually off topic. It's weird. It means well, but it can be the exact opposite of the program. I've heard the four agreements. Oh my gosh, I have to just pray and take deep breaths and see the person who wrote that is perhaps spiritually sick. And I hear people talk about the value of it. It's like, I might stir up some trouble by God's grace, saying, "Look, let's just ask this passage," and then they're horrified. It's like, yeah, not everything that's in print is helpful. Yeah, that's just my experience. So there is a reason why the AA or 12 step, any 12 step has this something called conference approved literature. And it means that when we speak what, and here I'm not trying to speak for any 12 step, but this is my experience being a member, is that we want to speak about the program literature that's useful. And outside stuff, we don't have an opinion on. Okay. You're going to get a kick out of this one. Going to therapy to get sober. I went to therapy to get sober. It didn't work. And I love therapists. They're nice people. In fact, they're, they're either neutral, well, there's three. Um, let's start with they're neutral. They just don't understand that true recovery is going to come from 12 steps. So, say, like, you go to a therapist and they say, yeah, AA is good, or go to SA for Sexaholics or Gambling Anonymous or whatever. And then when you start to go there, you go, wow, as a person, you may go, I might actually get more sober here than my therapist, who can be kind. But some therapists are helpful. Like, you're so fragile, you're so lonely, you have problems with self-esteem or depression, anxiety, suicide, etc., a troubled relationship that's falling apart. Yeah, it's not terrible to do that. But there's the neutral, and then there's the therapist that's actually not helpful. If they appeal to your ego in any way to help you try to figure out how you can get sober or come up with strategies, that basically goes to willpower, that's deadly, because it's just going to delay your recovery. If you're a true addict, if you're going to follow a 12 step program, and again, I'm not speaking for 12 steps, but it says in the AA book that three things became clear. We were alcoholics and could not manage our own lives. True. This is A, B, and C. B, probably no human power can relieve our addiction. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. So the problem with therapy is often involves self-insight. It often involves skills. It often involves trying harder. And assuming you can just go do this, just say no. Unlike depression and anxiety, where you give people tools and they're very motivated to do them because there's no pleasure associated with it, often it works well. But with this, if you try harder, it seems to get worse. So the third kind of therapist is someone who's supportive of recovery, which I would put myself in that camp. But what I can't do is be the 12-step process for them. I can be a coach. I've allowed myself to be more helpful and actually work the steps with people at times, but my inner heart says you shouldn't have to pay for this, and they need a real program with people. But I also realized some people were out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't think so. I've worked with people in Madagascar and Malta, Iran, Iraq, Germany, Australia, um, England, um, and then the US. Does that make me a good therapist or famous or coach? No, it just means that there's the internet and someone saw videos. Um, but um, I felt I had a judgment call like, well, they don't really have a lot of support where they are. Wouldn't it be better to pull up the AA book on the screen and just work through the steps with them? But I so prefer to have them have a a partner in recovery who will be there for as long as they need. And there's no money exchange. Really, really important. And I'd say most every place. Oh, now there's a great thing about the pandemic. The prison I worked in Madagascar, that'd be a non-issue now because most people are going to meetings online. Yeah, totally. The world has changed in 12 terms of 12-step recovery. Yeah. I'm not a fan of dumping in meetings. Um, this is this philosophy that it became well, let's go back. In the early days of AA, this is what I know, and everything can change little by little. Um, and I looked over there because there's a new book I'm going to be reading called The Writing of the AA Book. And some things are different than I thought. But in the early days of AA, the meetings were rows of chairs, and you had a speaker. And the speaker spoke for, it was called the 10, 10, and 40. 10 minutes on the problem, what it was like before recovery, 10 minutes of what they did in the steps to get recovery, and the last 40 minutes was spent on what is their life today. Yeah. And I'm not sure, but there weren't a lot of circle of chairs, and the focus was not on sharing the same way. I think the sharing principle from Oxford was there, but I don't think it was as much in the meeting as it was in private. And I was told that in 1960, so that's a long time since the beginning of AA, that patterning after um, therapy groups, encounter groups in the 60s, that then they started to put the meetings in circles. And Dr. Bob in 1950, and you can hear him online, and I'll try to put a link to his audio of this, said, "Do not let psychotherapy ruin this simple program." Why would he say that if he didn't see a trend towards psychoanalysis? And so you put things in the circle of chairs. Now the focus is not on God so much as it is each other. And that if I just share what's on my heart and how painful it is, that I'll get sober. And I did that, and it didn't work. And what's interesting is you can have a great connection with a group, and then once you leave, you feel this horrible abandonment, like you want to go act out or drink or drug or whatever. So now, is connecting in meetings bad? No. Is being honest in meetings bad? No. I think it can be very valuable, but it's really not the same as the program. So I tend to think that better to kind of carry the solution in meetings, which you would see in that format of one speaker, rather than carrying the problem. Because how did I come to this kind of bias of dumping in meetings? By me working with people who come into my office, and I mention like, "Hey, have you thought of going to AA?" And it's like, "Are you kidding me?" And they say, "I'd rather put a gun to my head than go there." Well, yeah, I know. Or it's so depressing. Same thing with It sounds like I'm putting down meetings, but it doesn't matter with some of the meetings. A lot of meetings people haven't been to, but some meetings they go, I just don't want to go there. Now, why would anybody say that if they were carrying the message of recovery? If there was a speaker who was inspiring of what their life was like, only 10 minutes on the path, 10 minutes during the steps, because that's how quick the steps were, how they did those steps and what their life is like today. Yeah, no, we spend a lot of time on the problem and dumping the problem. So phrases like give it away, yeah, just not a fan of. It's just my experience. And not a fan of giving a weather report. This is the people who kind of focus, and I did this. I did all these things actually. Actually, I did all these things. Yeah. I'll finish this and then I'll talk about that. That's funny. Giving a weather report. Now, what I mean by that is when people say, "Well, I was tempted. I saw the where I used to go gamble, or I drove by the casino, or the person who was selling drugs was on the street corner, or I saw five prostitutes, or no, actually things have been going great. I just haven't been tempted. It's just really good." It's kind of like saying, "Hey, we've been having high pressure areas and clouds over there, and we're anticipating a storm this week and a 50-mile-an-hour winds." Oh, and so that's what I tell people in the group. That's what I tell the sponsor. Or no, things are sunny and clear, low pressure. And all. Yeah, who cares about that? Somewhere I learned as a sponsor, as a coach, I said, I would say gently, so tell me, are you using, when I would ask, how are you doing? They'd give me a weather report. But and they learned to go, I'm going to ask them, are you doing your 10th and 11th step prayers? Are you searching where yourself is dishonest, fearful, or resentful? Are you going to meetings? Are you connecting with God, of your understanding of people, yourself? See, that's like for weather, I know how to bring sunscreen. I know how to wear UV protective clothing. I also know how to put on galoshes or shoes that are going to protect me, and I have an umbrella. See, it doesn't really matter how tempted you are, work the program and ignore the weather in a sense. Then you're not trying to do what I call trigger management, where a person's just trying to manage triggers. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a fan of all this. Now, I say all this, this is really good. What I'm not a fan of, I did. Did I go to 90 days, 90 meetings? I went to a lot of meetings. I thought, well, I'm going to try everything else. I'll go to it. Was it fun? It was kind of in a strange kind of way. I don't think I made 90 days, 90 meetings, but and then I hear, well, if you go to 3 meetings one day, that counts for the, yeah, interesting. Did I talk incessantly to a sponsor about things? That, yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was that, and it's not that. Did I read outside literature? Yes, surely I thought that there could be wisdom from a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, I will say that spiritual literature that related totally to 12 step did help me a lot. And honestly, I'm not sure if I would be sober if I didn't really change my understanding of the Christian faith by outside literature. But all the literature I was reading that jumped out at me, and some of you have followed our channel, you'll see that, well, it sounds so 12-step-ish. It's out. It's crazy, but it's technically not in the program. So that one I go. And some of these are iffy anyway. Going to therapy to get sober. Yep. 3 of them. Great therapists. Did it get me sober? No. Dumping in meetings. Yeah. For me, I was not a dumper. I was too much of a, hey, look at me. I'm okay. Um, But I thought if I could just say what was bothering me and my resentments, yeah, that'll get rid of it if I can just say it. And I had a lot of head nods. No one would comment. I think my sponsor would say things like, well, your choices are just get rid of this person in your life or whatever. Now, my sponsor was not the best at getting me in the steps. I learned later what the steps were, so it was kind of hit and miss there. But in giving a weather report, sure, I focused on that. So, in conclusion, it's kind of simple for chronic slipping is to get with someone you trust that has what you want, that has patience, love, and kindness and love, and who's going to pray for you, who's going to not give up. But they can't carry you, they're going to carry the message. And when you do share with them, make it profitable for them. Like if you're actually working the steps and working steps 10 and 11, then it should work. That's my experience. So, anyway, I wish you well. Feel free to like and subscribe if you have any comments or questions. It does actually inspire us to know what to share with you in the future. Take care. Have a great day of recovery.